Fasten your seatbelts this week because we have a huge amount of implied volatility and it looks like it's going to be a bumpy ride. So let's get into some stock market analysis, some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Nvidia, AMD, and Meta. Going over to look at AMC and GME so we can give you that updated crazy level for the week. So stick around for that and then make sure we stick around for volatility because that thing turned up on Friday. And is that going to continue right away on Monday? Let's get into it. There's a lot going on out there, and the biggest part here is just trying to keep things simple, right? So simply, if we really pay attention to this, we are still holding some kind of uptrend, and therefore, if this 2 hour still curls up, what can happen if it goes positive? Well, we can break through and see the stock market, see the SPY actually go to higher levels. Now, we do need to watch out for reversal signals for some kind of trap or something like that, because we have a huge implied volatility for the week. We have a pretty damn good sizable move up or down, starting off right away on Monday. Now we do have the daily expected moves and weekly expected moves. The weekly expected moves in purple here, 590.51 to the upside and 567.57 to the downside. Then for the day, we do have 582.80 for Monday and 575.28. Now what these are 68% zones, right? So this is what the options market priced in for Monday, and this is what the options market is priced in for the entire week. So if we do get that 2 hour to cross up, we can start to look for if we get to 590.51 or gravitate outside of that. But right now you're noticing that we did just reject on that and the 30-minute did curl down near positive territory, right? We would like this to really be crossing down into negative territory to really be like, oh yeah, that selling can continue. But as we're still holding this blue line right here, we have to pay attention if this is going to buy back up because we went back into our resistance zone, right? It originally was a support zone that turned into a resistance zone for a little bit, then became a support zone again, and we are still there. Okay, so we have to pay attention early on in the week. If the SPY is going to curl up on a 2 hour chart, that would be a bullish sign, meaning we're going to continue upward in that positive trend. But if this 30-minute starts to drop too much, maybe we need to read into the fact that the daily has crossed for a couple days now for the SPY, and we've had a few closings below the 5 and the 9-day moving average, and maybe this needs to reach down to test the lower prices, maybe somewhere around that 50-day moving average. So these look like the main things to look at for the SPY at this moment. So I think we're just going to flip over to the Qs. The Qs right away, you just notice that is not a strong looking bar and it might have trapped some people up there. We'll see if something is going to scale up, right? I have a hard time believing that earnings or any kind of earnings is really going to be the thing that tears down the market, because actually most of the time earnings ends up helping out the market, right? If they announce buybacks, if they announce one good thing, if they have good margins, and as inflation grows higher, it's easier for companies to produce better numbers actually. So we'll pay attention to that as the consumer is still seeming to buy, but I believe becoming weaker because we looked at the delinquency rates on our last stream, right? On Friday, we paid attention to the fact that delinquency rates are skyrocketing. They have a 3-month divergence down there saying, hey, this thing's going into a positive trend. It just went into a positive trend. The last time that happened was 2007, 2008, okay, was the housing crisis, okay? So some kind of crisis looks like it might be happening here, but I just want to pay attention if there's downside as the daily has curled down. Now, that doesn't mean that we cannot head higher. This 2 hour is still crossing up. This all could be some kind of cup and handling in some way at this level, right? We come up to that level, maybe we're able to use this as support. We are outside of our pink line. So for the week, if we're going to remain curled up, then we're going to be wanting to pay attention to the top side weekly expected move. That would be 508.66 to the upside and 481.98 to the downside. For the day, for Monday, which we do update these every single night, so make sure you're subscribed, but 499.53 to the upside, and we do have 491.11 to the downside. This pink line, whenever we get outside of it, bad things tend to happen. You notice that here, little trap, here, big trap, here, little trap. Is this going to be our big trap, or are we going to see one move higher and then see that pull down? That's something that we have to pay attention to. But right now the 2 hour is positive in positive territory. So let's go over to the 30-minute. When we look at the 30-minute here, this thing has, I believe it's crossed down. Yep, it's crossed down, but the key thing here is it is extremely positive at this moment. So this tells us there is still an opportunity to go make a 30-minute divergence, even if we pull back, fill a gap, and then see this thing turn back up. Well, then we can maybe create that nice curvy divergence that gets us really close to the center line. That's what we're mainly going to be paying attention to this week. Make sure to stick around if you enjoy this analysis for the SPY and the Qs. We're trying to keep it simple and just pay attention to what we have. have to, and take into consideration those dailies have crossed, but at the same time, make sure you stick around for volatility towards the end of this video. One thing that is interesting is Apple. Apple making the divergence up here very, very steep, even getting another point here where this is pretty controlled and a drop can happen, and that is very, very bad if that goes into negative territory. Notice we go negative actually on this bar right here. So just before the big selling comes in, we go negative and plummet. So pay attention to if things are actually going negative. Sometimes that does mean that the selling is about to pick up, right? So something to pay attention to for Apple early on is this is great because we are testing the exact breakdown area. If you really want to see where that floodgate opened, it was right here, is right where this little low is. So the fact that we went and retested that, we have to pay attention if that 30-minute does drop down, because that would say confirmation that we're going negative, and that's where the probabilities add up. When you're right by negative territory, the first move is going into it. It usually does mean, hey, we're going to continue that trend, break the low, and go make a new one. So that would be very bad because when we pull up the macro side of things, the daily has crossed here for Apple, meaning what? It's confirming divergence at this level. You know, you might have said these were wonky, but when you draw this across, you go, okay, this is starting to add up. And if this is going to cross down, that 30-minute might turn down. Maybe we get some kind of retest. We start to head to the downside. So earnings will be coming up for Apple, looks like on Thursday. So this will be one to pay close attention to. We have an extreme, like I calculate the options data, by the way. So if you need ranges for stocks like Apple, Nvidia, anything that we cover on this channel, and a few more, you can join the Patreon down in the description. And the implied volatility for a lot of stocks this week is increasing a lot. I mean, you're looking at Microsoft going from 21% to 48% this week. So we have some big moves in there for stocks this week. So you want to be paying attention. You want to be managing risk, all the things that we try to teach you in the course down in the description. But the 2-hour turning up is going to be the bullish thing. So right away for Apple, right, we're just trying to keep it simple, relatively controlled. If that 30-minute does drop down, hey, negativity can happen. But if this 2 hour is able to cross up, you might have a chance to take out this high and go make a new one. I know that this is a low. I know that this is a lower low, but we need to see this confirmed on the 30-minute as a high to get down a little bit deeper. Okay, so if this 2 hour does cross up early on in the week, that's the bullish signal I want to pay attention to. Tesla, obviously, this is going to be one that is more waiting for the opportunity because the opportunity just has been so massive since that curl up from the earnings. So from this level, when we do break through key levels, you would like some consolidation. And as we haven't broken cleanly through the highest high, the highest previous high, I would say, some consolidation here can go a long way. And weirdly enough, Tesla normally has like 70 to 85% implied volatility every single week. That's why we thought this was a little fishy. But for the most part, this week, Tesla is actually one of the stocks that had its implied volatility drop down. So that does lean me towards, hey, this could be some kind of pulling back, right? On a 2 hour, on a 30-minute, we could end up pulling back down to that center line and waiting for the next opportunity, right? When you do see a massive move like this, hey, it's great. You can look at the bigger time frames. Is this a good investment? Tesla is suggesting it's it's a pretty good investment for the next 12 to 24 months, which is just surprising in this environment. But if you're looking for that opportunity on the shorter time frames, you really want to be patient with these guys. Pay attention to a different stock. You don't want to be trying to chase, even if this goes higher. There's no technicals here that are giving you confirmation of that. When you would get confirmation, it would be more so if you see some structure like this, and then we're able to break through a key level, right? We really round that out, get this MACD by that center line, and then curl up into positive territory. That's just pretty much waiting for a swing trade. Being patient is very, very important. We mentioned it multiple times in the course down in the description. All of those are 90% off. But if I was looking at Tesla right now, I'd really be looking for some kind of pullback before making a decision. Doesn't mean you can't make a decision, obviously. We are just giving our opinion here about Tesla. When I see a stock after earnings like this, I like to be patient. And I think that your MACD is telling you, hey, this is going up dramatically high. It's super overbought at this point. So some kind of pullback would be the best thing to happen for a trade setup. Amazon actually turning back down from this level. Not a bad level to try to make some kind of handle. Looks like we're going up just a little bit past the gap fill, and then maybe we get some kind of handle to give us some kind of, I would say, A, B, C move. If you want to include this, maybe we get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 push higher. We'll see. But for the most part, we just want to see that 30-minute is pulling back. So we should expect more of that. Maybe we go down and fill a gap and then blow up the time frames to see what's the 2 hour telling us. Well, the 2 hour is telling us positivity still. So if this is going to remain in a positive trend, not do anything with this lower low, well, then this could just keep turning up and end up crossing through. So I think the 30-minute would be good to watch early on in the week. But if that 2-hour crosses down, where is it? It's really close to negative territory. We came up to the same point, making another point of divergence if that was to turn down early on in the week. And Amazon has an extreme amount of implied volatility. Now, that could just be because on Friday, we do get the earnings. So I think that could be something to pay attention to. But for Amazon, 30-minute curls up, okay, it might be a cup and handle. 2-hour curls down, you might see some dramatic downside here for Amazon. But just a note about earnings. Earnings is a 50-50 flip. A lot of technicals can be taken out of consideration when earnings comes around because it is a super data-driven thing. It is a super just analysis-driven thing of the actual earnings. So if earnings does have, they can have 20 bad things and say one good thing. And if that causes people to buy at an unprecedented rate, you can see something like Tesla happen for any of these stocks. So we just tell people around earnings, hey, something that I like to do, I like to downsize positions. I don't like to take full positions if I'm going to trade a stock with earnings, or I just stay away from it. And I'm going to tell you 99% of the time, I'm just staying away from a stock during earnings. Now, Nvidia is going to be the big dog because we are outside of a monthly expected move. We see all the points of divergence, and we did unconfirm, right? We did start to reject here. You see how these pink bars turned into a red one, meaning we are starting to reject here. We have to see if that fully, I think, rejects early on in the week for Nvidia, and that can cause some serious problems. Now, the other opportunity here is we're going to get a little bullish still, right? We're still in positive territory for this 30-minute MACD. So if this is not a point of divergence, a point of weakness, or we're going to get rid of that, then you're going to see this 30-minute be able to curl back up into positive territory. And that's why we have weekly expected moves for you. Because if you make that upward move, we go to a weekly expected move up in here and we cross above that, and you see this go like that and make a point of divergence there, that's what you want to be paying attention to for Nvidia. But quick note, it is coming into the end of October. We only have a few days left, and Nvidia is way outside of its monthly expected move. In the last 3 times we have seen this signal, we've seen dramatic things happen, right? We've used it twice for a bullish trade, once for a bearish trade, and every single one has played out in a good sizable move. 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, and now we're seeing it a 4th time. So be very cautious with Nvidia going forward. I think one signal we can really pay attention to is if the daily starts to turn down here, then I think we have a pretty good decision on which direction Nvidia does want to go. Then we just have to look for earnings, which comes out in the middle of November. So that's what I'd really be looking for from Nvidia, seeing if this 30-minute can curl back up, or seeing if this 2-hour is fully going to reject early on in the week. This is a stock that has the biggest implied volatility I think I've ever seen in it, and that's AMD. AMD actually giving this 2-hour signal as well before the earnings. You see a 2-hour signal here saying, hey, the daily can start to cross here. And what happened on the 30-minute from this is telling you, hey, this can reverse to the upside, but remember, earnings can really turn that on its head. So just be careful with it. But for the most part, the 30-minute is positive. We're reacting to a great level to see some kind of handle, some kind of consolidation, and it's in a positive trend. So if that does want to curl down and fill this gap, well, see if we're able to turn back up and retake this staggered blue line, which is the 5, because a lot of the time we'll ride that up, we'll ride that down. So if this is able to curl back up into positive territory, maybe this is just some kind of consolidation to see a solid size move here. Got to be careful with it because earnings are coming up, and you see that one thing to note is Nvidia, right? We just showed how that is outside of its expected move for the month, and we paid attention to that signal multiple times. But at the same time, we can say, okay, AMD has earnings this week. If AMD has a weak earnings, that can probably affect Nvidia. If it has a strong earnings, that can probably affect Nvidia. So I would be looking at how AMD looks, looking at the reaction from the earnings, and then paying attention to what Nvidia is doing after that, because I think that would be very helpful with Nvidia's reversal signals. So from here, you just want to see, are the earnings going to be good? Can we curl up a daily chart as that is close enough to positive territory to see a strong move here? So that's something we'll be paying attention to. You do have some basing out signals here. Hopefully those don't get thrown out for earnings, and maybe we see an upside play here for AMD if they produce some good earnings. That's going to be the key thing. Meta, you're kind of in a similar boat where the daily is still positive, and you've seen that good pullback, right? When we saw us crossing down and people were asking, is the Meta going to turn up from right here? I said, I think it has more pullback in it. I think it really wants to get to a level to start to trick people, and this would be the level to get to. If this daily does cross up, though, you should expect positivity. That's very, very clear. As we look at a 2-hour, we're not really seeing basing out signals here just yet, but we did react down to a key level, and we were able to buy back up for a moment. So we'll see if this is in some way, some kind of filling of a cup, getting a handle. The 2-hour would have to cross down for this to get bad again. That's going to be a key thing. And then you always still want to pay attention for those basing out signals in whatever way we see, especially if they're by a weekly expected move. We do get earnings soon. We did just have an election where I'm sure that these big social media companies are making tons and tons and tons of money off of this election with advertiser money. So be a little bit cautious with that. I think that's a good point to have you think about. Now, for the most part, we did see on the 30-minute that there was no divergence, and we see a big upward move. So what could be taking place here is, well, we're at a level where we really need to break through. You can see all these touches in here where we really need to break through this. And I really like when a stock does give us some consolidation before that move, so we can really see if this is able to curl down maybe for a moment, right, fill a gap and then turn back up, because what that would allow is this to get by that center line, curl up into positive territory, and curl up into positive territory. Right as that is happening, you're about to bust out. So that will be interesting. But if we get that look before earnings, I have to be cautious with it, because they could say 20 good things and one bad thing, and the stock ends up going down. Okay, so it's kind of a rough spot when you're around earnings, and that's why most of the time I stay away from it. If I feel like taking a play, I just downsize that position or take a longer out expiration so that I have time to react and not lose a bunch in any kind of play, because when you have bigger moves, you can make money off of small amounts. So it's perfectly fine to downsize the position. I don't need to play, $20,000 behind something when I could just take a little scalp, a little this, a little that, and then see what happens. One stock that we don't talk about a ton, but I think it's important to talk about now, is Microsoft. Microsoft did make a significant 30-minute divergence, and this is something that we posted to Patreon. If you want to see a few setups that we're paying attention to, watch Patreon. But for the most part, you want to see this on the 2-hour as well. Something we didn't talk about on Patreon was the fact that we did get this little red blip, which is kind of telling me, hey, this could be 2-hour divergence. So one thing to be aware of for Microsoft is actually going to be if this daily can cross down, because we have a 2-hour divergence. We're up by that top Bollinger. We're in a zone that used to be a buy zone, turned into resistance, and then it turned into a buy zone, then it turned into, it's an important level. This is an important gray area here. So if this does cross down, you can see how things can get ugly. And Microsoft has a ton of implied volatility. And if you really draw this out too, you kind of do this, and then you look here, we have a slanted head and shoulders forming. So if you break through that, it might get ugly pretty fast for Microsoft. I think this week will be a bumpy ride for a lot of stocks. AMC and GME are making these crazy levels just a little bit closer, right? Last week for AMC, I believe it was at 471. This week it is at 470. So you're a little bit closer to seeing something crazy. Important thing is the daily's remaining curled up. Now, one thing to look at here for the 30-minute is going to be the fact that down here on your RSI, you did have, I think it would be on an hourly, some form of divergence. But the main thing we want to say is every time that the crazy move has happened, the 30-minute has curled up and it wasn't able to curl back down. But what happened last week? It curled down. So that tells us most likely not the moment. But if that can whip right back up, then it could be because that daily is turned up and GME is getting very tight. And I think GME is the real one you want to watch here. And we were pointing out the little 30-minute divergence here that said, hey, this can reverse around the 2-hour. And the 2-hour has almost divergence down here. So you are losing the 5. You need this 30-minute to whip back around. And the 2-hour, you see how we were trying to confirm almost over. I keep saying almost because it's not really there, right? The price action slightly up here from the closes. So really this is just regular behavior here. If this can remain positive, that would be a good sign for the stock, right? But the main signal you need to happen here is you need dailies to start to turn back up. You really need daily charts to turn up for GameStop, as they are already turned up for AMC. You notice that the price action is getting very tight in here, so I think an explosive move is coming, and if that can turn up into positive territory, the level that you have to get through to see something crazy is 2191, very, very close. Okay, so if you just get a move like this, you can see this thing take off in a gamma squeeze, because that would take the options market off guard. Or this could be the level where if you kind of cross up before then, you could see them fight the stock, because if you remain in that level or even go outside of it and then intraday turn back down, that's where you can really fight it. We actually had a time in the past where this did happen. And I think there were 2 times. I think there was this day here, we went outside, we were seeing something crazy and it faded the entire move. And then this point right here, we actually got through it for a moment and gave it up the next day. Okay, so this can be an area where the fight really begins or intensifies. But the main thing you're looking for is this a good signal? If the daily curled up here, you have tons of little divergences down here. You have 30-minute divergences in this price action here. So if this would turn up, momentum would say this could have a big upward move, and maybe it sees something crazy if it gets through 2191. Volatility, I'm just going to tell you the main signal first off, right? The very important thing you need to happen for volatility, if you want volatility to come in, hey, you need that daily to start to confirm more upside. We have held above that 50, and this 50 is starting to loop back up. So even though I'm like, earnings usually doesn't do too much to the market, in my opinion, especially when inflation is higher, in these times, because it seems like profits only go up, buying back of your stock only goes up, even though we're seeing a little bit dampered in the buybacks this season. But for the most part, if volatility can turn up on the daily scale, boom, that can really start to take off. This could all be some kind of big up, some kind of big handle. So we have to be paying attention to that. Volatility can come in dramatically if that cross up does happen. And that's something to pay attention to. As we go into a 2-hour, you're just noticing this. This is what we were talking about live, and we were going, the market's looking fishy here. And our title of the YouTube or of the live video on Friday was, is this a liquidity grab or is this going to go to all-time highs for the SPY? And we were looking at volatility saying if that crosses down, it's likely that the SPY is going to cross up. But something about that move made me go, okay, I'm going to reapply and buy my first position for volatility back, right? I sold up in here because I saw the 30-minute turn back down. Then I want to see, okay, can this 2-hour make a divergence? But something about this just gave me that eerie feeling, and I went for it. Just that I'll scale in here and I'll scale in down here if it happens. But for the most part, turned up into positive territory on a 2-hour. That's a big deal, and you're not seeing a wick on the last bar. Notice you're not seeing that wick on the last bar anymore. You're seeing upside for volatility, which means that can continue on Monday. We weren't up by 10% or anything like that to give us some percentage moves or something like that for the SPY. What we can say is if this daily crosses up, it's going to be a worrisome sign. If the 30-minute, though, is able to cross back down, well, then this might be all divergence in some way. Now, I don't think that that's a plausible thing at this moment. I really think if the 30-minute does curl back down, it is most likely to be some kind of pullback, some kind of maybe trap to the upside, because this 30-minute is pretty damn positive. We'll see if that can base out and turn back up if that happens. Right now, volatility, though, is pointing up, so you want to be very cautious with upside plays, even though I think we're going to have a bumpy ride, and I think we'll see kind of a bounce around kind of week. So I think the main takeaway here is Nvidia going to land back in its monthly expected move with those reversal signals, or is the SPY going to just turn up on this 2-hour and we see a solid move? I think those are the two things I'd really be paying attention to this week, but we will be watching stocks with you live every single day, every single morning of this week. So really appreciate you guys showing up to the live videos. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing on this video. I think we need to be cautious with this week, as we're seeing that was looking like some kind of liquidity grab at this moment, and I don't think we're safe from a big flush down, and the implied volatility, aka the options market, is pricing in some big moves for this week, and we have a ton of earnings, so it's going to be an interesting one, and we'll be here to watch it with you every single morning. Thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday, and I hope you're ready for tomorrow, because it could get a little wild. All right, peace.